All right, we are live. According to StreamYard, there are 0 people watching. Okay, now it's 108. Welcome to our Friday legal panel. And if you like this kind of content, please subscribe. I'm using the word subscribe early because YouTube supposedly has a magic thing going on. And I hope you all see that. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but from what I understand, it triggers a button and it triggers a response. So as we get the different folks drifting in, welcome to Friday. We have lawyers. They're all doing things. They come in, they come out. We have with us Steve of Southern Law, and for the first time, Ian Corine. Now,
good to see you.
A lot of people might not recognize you, Ian, from the LawTube side of things, but I'm sure they recognize you if they're a YouTube creator.
That's probably true.
So tell us about yourself, your past, and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on, Eric. I really appreciate it. I followed you for years, and it's good to work together. So I'm Ian Corine. I started my career back in 2019 or so, helping social media creators with the law, doing brand deals, negotiating with the social media platforms. And so for, past 4 years or so, I was doing that kind of work, and I loved it. But I loved it so much that I wanted to kind of expand the topics that I talk about. And so in February of this year, I started all new social media accounts: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, you name it, X, and have kind of capitalized on this brand I've created called Lawyers Take, which is basically kind of like a no holds barred take on trending political events, and then just giving, my perspective. And sometimes it goes on in the Republican side, sometimes it goes on the Democratic side, sometimes it's conservative, sometimes it's progressive, but it's just my take. And so it's kind of funny when I get comments back on my social media platforms. The best response I always have is, okay, this is just my take. You can go on with your life. It doesn't mean that much. So that's what I've been doing. And I've been really excited. So as a result, I've been following a lot of these political stories I think we're going to talk about today, crime stories and those kinds of things, and doing videos about them.
Awesome. Now, out of curiosity, because you are very wired into the YouTube creator community, and
yes.
I would lean to say that the more popular ones might tend to be a little, shall we say, woke. Yeah. Are you facing some controversy, or are you burning any bridges at all by expressing yourself more openly politically on another channel?
I don't know about burning bridges. I definitely have gotten response from the various different creators. I think it's probably like what you did at some point. At some point, you just kind of have to say, you know what? I don't like what's going on in this country. I have a platform, and I'd like to talk about it. And you know what? If I lose friends, if I insult people or something like that, it's okay because I know I'm doing it in good faith. So I've kind of just came, Viva Frei always talks about, Ian, you got the red pill, you got red pilled. And that's kind of a funny joke between us. But really what it is just a decision to say, listen, I'm going to lay it on the line. I have so much experience, federal prosecutor, worked for the governor of California, 20 years with my own law firm, civil firm, doing business and insurance litigation. I'd like to give you my interpretation of what I've seen in court before judges, working with judges, because I think it's valuable and it can really move the narrative.
Awesome. And Steve, I'm sure you probably face this too, because I know that politically you may come out leaning slightly one way or another. I find it really draconian the way we're treated on platforms where all of a sudden videos are demonetized or things are happening, and there's a chilling effect. And I'm so happy to see people expressing their voices, but I kind of feel like it's you don't meet guidelines. Okay, which guideline? Which part? Yeah, you just don't. And so what does that do? That plants a seed in our brains that we spend all of our time going, oh God, is it because I said this? Or is it because I said that? Or is it because I said this or that?
So true.
Steve, are you facing that when you're doing your videos and trying to say, should I say that? Not?
Yeah, not often, because I usually stay out of the politics thing and just cover the crimes or maybe some kind of civil procedure thing, and I try to just stay out of it, and except for when we're talking about it here, because there are people who have great in-depth views, and my voice isn't something that really adds that. It's a little bit the opposite of what Ian was saying, So from my perspective, right? So I enjoy listening to a lot of the other guys and wrangling with people on your channel sometimes, but when I'm doing it, I just try and stay right down the middle. I did a Donald Trump thing on his case one time, trying to take no side. And, I get comments that you love Trump, you hate Trump. And then you're right in the middle, right? And you get shot at by both sides. And I'm thinking, I did all this work for this video, and I don't think I really informed anybody, because people just have their own opinions already on it. So I think it takes a certain level probably of creator to do what Ian said, which is move the needle with an audience that you have, and you have credibility with it. So I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy talking to you guys on these topics, but I usually don't hit it on my channel, but that doesn't mean I don't know it exists, exactly what you're talking about. We had that stream a few weeks ago, Eric, where it was euphemism day, because if you say this word or that word, your video's doomed. And that tends to be a very one-sided censorship that goes on.
Totally agree. And that is terribly frustrating. So while we're talking about censorship and opening, I was actually going somewhere with this. It's my roundabout way, but today is the birthday of, if you will, the renewed, I'll dead name them, Twitter, now X, now whatever, whatever we want to call it. And of course, I'm sure that everybody will be shocked to hear that Mashable is immediately saying, it's a dumpster fire. It's terrible. Let that sink in. Look at the whack job who is taking over the platform and is reporting scurrilously on the side, going, "Oh, this happened. Oh, this happened." These guys do it. There's another newsletter, Casey something, or I forgot his name. He's with The Verge, and I'm like, dude, your whole goal is to document every bad thing that ever happened with X / Twitter. I'd love to get your opinions and your feelings on it, because I personally feel it's a mixed bag. So I'll go with Ian, because you're
yes, of course. Social. Well, I am super enthusiastic about X. I don't understand these articles. I just really don't know what the narrative is. I think Elon has really changed the whole platform type structure, especially when he's emphasized video. We're starting to see more and more big time celebrities, opinion makers start making videos and consume them on X. My dad is 77 years old. And one of the first things he asked me back in, I guess it was June or something like that, maybe it was a little bit later than that, was when Tucker Carlson took to X, and he was like, "How do I do this?" So it's expanded the public consciousness. People are now consuming X. They want to have X on Apple TV and Roku and those things, so people can actually use it as a network like that. I've seen extreme more engagement on X. I've actually seen better conduct on X in the past. You're always going to get that kind of hate that's always there. But a lot of people are pushing back about that, and they're saying, listen, let's have relevant, substantive, well-documented opinions going forward, and we're not going to tolerate those. And somehow Elon's algorithm is starting to kind of funnel through bots and also bad conduct on the platform. So I'm excited. Some of the creators that I know that I've worked for are making $25,000 a month or more with their content. So I'm a big supporter. I can't wait to do more.
And by the way, he hit it, but he's at Ian Corine on X, and I'm at Eric on X. And Steve, I have to confess to you, your Twitter handle drives me bonkers. I always have to copy and paste it, because it's like I don't know how to type it. It's very frustrating. So how can people follow you on X while we're talking about that?
It's the O is replaced with a 0, and then it has an underscore before law. And then on Instagram, which I don't know how to use yet, it's the same thing, but without the little thing there. I have a love-hate relationship with Twitter. I like it a lot more since Musk got it, which is kind of interesting, because I was a pretty anti-Musk in terms of some of the online debates that used to go on called Tesla Q, which when people were shorting Tesla stock, people going long Tesla stock, epic fights on Twitter about that. And But he's a character that's extremely multifaceted. But what he's done with Twitter, I think, is certainly for the positive. And if there is garbage on Twitter now, well, guess what? There was garbage on it before, right? And there will always be some. But I think less censorship of opinions is good. And that they took people's opinions, right, and then they put it under, well, you're hateful, you're attacking, you're violent, or whatever, and then just censored whole viewpoints that weren't those things. And we all know that's true, and there's less of that now. So I appreciate that. That's for sure.
Okay, and that's the way I feel too. If I have a criticism of Elon Musk, I think in fairness, it's his capricious nature. I think that he is very mercurial and he makes radical changes very rapidly, and then he'll undo the change, then he'll do the change, he'll undo the change. And some of that gets to be sort of like whiplash. At the same time, I will say that there was a study done on CEOs, and one of these included Bill Gates and also Steve Jobs. And they praised Steve Jobs because he was decisive. So I guess there's a kind of a tear there. I'm sure you guys have both worked with a lot more corporate people like that. But from what I understand, one of the most valuable things for a CEO is decisiveness, but in having the ability to say, oh, never mind, and change their mind and just do the exact opposite thing of what they did. Steve Jobs was famous for that because he would say, who would look at a screen on an iPod, and the next year it'd be like iPod with video.
Yeah.
Or his famous thing would be like, oh, we brought this forward. Whatever he was mocking before. It's like, but Apple solved it. You have any thoughts on that, Ian?
I don't really. I'm just really excited about, Elon's bringing his positivity, his innovation to the social media platform. I think it's smart. It seems like whenever a billionaire becomes a billionaire, or many, many, many billionaires, they want to get control over a kind of a news outlet. And I think this is Elon's decision. I think he is mercurial. I think ultimately he's good-hearted and wants to help the public dialogue. So I'm all for that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, hey, if you're really... Well, he's got a bad spot because he does have to sell advertising. Yeah. And so there's that give or take, and I don't know. I think he's obviously a little bit nutty handling that. Now,
I know the thought is now that he may be charging a small fee for any use on the platform, which... again, I think you got to remember, because, we can remember back before social media, you paid for subscriptions. If you got Time magazine, which I would never read now, but if you got it, you paid for it, right? Mm. And there were advertisements in Time magazine too. People have gotten so used to being the product, there's a new social media platform I can join for free and post a lot, and they use my posts and they sell ads. I'm not opposed to a subscription platform, so hopefully the bots are reduced, and everyone is kind of motivated. They have a stake in this community to be able to and also to be authentic themselves, to represent their opinions. So, I know it sounds crazy. I know it's kind of counterintuitive in this day and age, but I don't mind the changes he's making, because again, free speech is my main component when I'm doing my social media posts. And I really want more of it out there. I don't want people who are on the left side limited in what they can say, and I don't want people on the right side limited in what they can say. And I think that X right now is the best platform from that. And that's having social media accounts on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and understanding all the different censorship that's going on right now. I could tell you each platform what words you can't say. I mean, that's crazy being a social media creator.
Totally valid point.
Yeah.
All right. So,
hey Eric, before you switch off, because I'm watching you on a Mac, and you're slamming Apple. And did you not realize that the new iPhone 15 that they innovated and have a USB-C port?
They sure do.
I mean, come on. I mean, this is fresh technology they bring in here for convenience for the consumer. So I want to defend them in that way.
As you should, because the EU did make sure that Apple fixed our port on the bottom.
Exactly.
To their credit, okay, I'm kind of glad that they didn't dwell on it too much. They didn't have the sniffles about it. But at the same time, they did for once, they enabled the port with a lot of capabilities,
Yes.
which surprised everyone. They, of course, neutered it for the entry-level model, but on the Pro model, they said, okay, it's good USB, 3 speeds versus 2 or whatever. So, I mean, it's got good speed, solid all the way. It connects to external drives. And honestly, everybody's kind of shocked. They were like, oh, wait a minute. They didn't go proprietary. They didn't have the special cable.
Yeah.
And maybe they were just being preempted. They're like, okay, we lost this one. We're just going to put this crap out there and move on and pretend it's always been there. But I don't know. I don't know if everybody is going to be happy about that or not. Now, I want to turn to a dark subject, especially because you're here, Steve, and I'm sure you have thoughts on this. We currently have a really dire situation in Maine where there is a shooter on the loose. And not surprisingly, immediately, we're popping up with calls for gun control. Now, I do want to point out there was an irony. There was one mass shooting this year that I recall, and for some reason, nobody was talking about gun control after that shooting. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was a shooting in Nashville. And for some reason, almost everyone could get in line on that one, because typically you have people who are either saying gun controls, it is bad, guns, take, grab them away, horrible, or the other side usually typically saying there are other factors involved. There's mental illness. Please help them get treatment. That Nashville one, it seemed like everybody was in alignment temporarily on maybe there needed to be some kind of treatment. And I don't know why that is. Maybe something about the identity of the shooter. I don't know if you guys have any opinions on that.
Well, that is certainly true. This guy seems right up the narrative alley for this topic. If he's an ex-Army guy, a rural guy, and allegedly wrote pro-Trump things or whatever on his social media, so that's who they want, right? So this is to be the kind of shooting that they want to use for the point that they're trying to make, which is, hey, if these guns didn't exist, you couldn't shoot people with them, which in the abstract is certainly true. Of course, it ignores the Second Amendment and what the court says it means. And it also ignores, as you said, what's driving people to want to do this. Like, it's so unimaginable that to conceive of shooting innocent people. But this guy, I think it's going to turn out, that he did have some significant mental problems that he was already seeking treatment for. And so what he was still doing with rifles, I don't know, hearing voices and things like that. And sometimes that happens. You have mentally ill people are not inherently violent by any stretch, or necessarily more violent than anyone else, but there are some ways that mental illness can manifest itself that can cause somebody to do this. I mean, I've certainly met people like that have shot people. So if this guy's in that category, then why weren't there treatment options involved early on to get the guns out of his hands when he still had some sense? I don't know the circumstances. I think he's probably going to turn up dead, right? I don't think they've found him yet, but they were searching a lake or something like that. So that's awful.
I don't know, because his neighbors apparently are saying this guy grew up there. He's very, very capable. He's a kind of survivalist type guy. And I forgot his name, but his first name is Eric. And if you look at the Olympic Park bombing in 1996, Eric, forgot his last name, was on the lam, I believe, for 5 years.
Rudolph?
Eric Rudolph, thank you.
Yeah.
He was in your territory, right? Somewhere in North Carolina, living on the land. Now, I am positive, considering everything, that I think that some neighbors knew he was out there, and he probably did have a little bit of assistance. My opinion, completely unprovable, at this point, but it is unlikely. Now, this guy, he may or may not, I don't know. I hope it's not Eric Rudolph thing. I mean, this guy is very, very dangerous. I hope he's immediately caught and others are prevented from being harmed. One thing that's kind of spooky that came up is like two stories colliding on X, but somebody had posted a link that I sent in reply to this particular conglomeration of headlines about shooters and hearing voices. And what is creepy about this is I literally just this morning posted this video tweet, and hopefully this comes up all right.
Can't hear this. It's going. I haven't turned it on yet. When I do, it's going to blast out a 65 kilohertz beam. Because the wavelength is so small, it doesn't spread. Because 65 kilohertz has a wavelength like that. So it's going to be, in that sense, similar to a laser. It just comes right out as a beam. Now, how do we make that audible? Well, they put a modulation on top of the 65 kilohertz. There's a modulation. And now, here's the next thing I have to tell you. That 65 kilohertz is very high amplitude. It won't hurt you, we don't think. Okay? You still can't hear it, and we don't think it'll hurt you. And it's very high amplitude. And what happens when you have two sound waves like this, sound plus sound can create sound, but only at high amplitudes. At low amplitude, sound waves just travel right through each other. You may be sort of familiar with this. But at high amplitude, you can create sound. So what happens in this apparatus is the audio sound, the sound that you're going to hear, is actually created in the beam, not here. And because it's created in the beam and it stays in the beam, we have a beam of sound. So let me demonstrate this for you. Let me turn it on. And I'm going to find the piece of music that we like. Yeah. You may not like it.
The Eagles. You like the Eagles? Okay, good. Oh, we have a friendly audience this year.
Yeah. I think they're just saying that to make us feel better.
Right. All right.
It's worth the $2,000. It's not our money. Now, the sound that you're hearing is being created in this beam. It almost sounds like it's coming from your head. So let me try to scan the whole audience here so everybody gets to hear this.
Am I the only one that finds that a bit chilling?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting. I think I've seen that video before. I don't know how this really would apply here, but are you thinking that voices were sent to the killer?
I don't know if they are to him, but all I could think of was what a powerful tool that would be to either send subliminal messages, or if you just want to make somebody crazy. I mean, literally, if you want to target somebody, like let's say there's a quote politician or something, or what have you, imagine that. Think of that directional control. You see wiping over the people as it hit them. Cool, but nobody hears anything. And I find that just absolutely chilling in the wrong hands, because you quite literally are creating somebody externally as a paranoid schizophrenic in a way, right? I mean, I hear voices. Well, what if they did? It's really, really frightening stuff. And I'm not going to say that it's tied in with the shooter. Obviously, I would never want to make that claim. All I want to say is, geez, it's possible. Nate, your thoughts?
I don't know. Hey, it would freak me out, but I would say the number one thing though is that it's like some of those religious when someone says they have like this religious thing that happens to them, it's really because of ignorance. Like they don't know why it's happening, but there's a scientific reason behind it. I would kind of fall under that, because if that would have happened to me, I would really honestly believe that I was hearing some things or something like that. So it's a really powerful way to manipulate someone. But I don't know if this shooter or anything like with this shooter has anything to do with that. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a bit far to go.
Of course.
All right.
No, but that's why I wanted to clarify. I'm not saying it's just that it's possible. I mean, it could be done. I don't know that it's been done. I'm not going to make that kind of claim. That's extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
But to even suggest it's possible I could be killed by a meteorite right now in the house, right? It's like you cloak it into possibilities.
Well, no, I focus on the possibility that you could make somebody paranoid.
That's all right. That's true. That's fair.
And I don't think that's a stretch. And different people react in different ways. For example, cannabis has been proven to cause psychosis with certain individuals.
Yes.
This is a fact. It's not a conspiracy, and it's not all individuals. It's people who are more susceptible. So people who are younger, 25 and under, they don't recommend using it until you're over 25, things like that. So it can be very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
But
and some of the drugs they're handing out now to people to help them have that side effect on some people, at least to cause them to have ideas of violence or self-harm and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh yes, there's a lot on SSRDs. I think they're called questions like serotonin inhibitor, whatever it is. But yeah, there's a strong commonality amongst a lot of shooters that apparently they were on specific medication. Not that we're doctors or have any opinions, and YouTube is the source of all brilliance when it comes to anything medical. I defer completely to the YouTube algorithm.
Have you taken the new? You've taken the new thing, huh?
Yes.
I just had the 2-hour session myself.
Yes. I took the Big Brother YouTube training for the Nate and Eric channel, which, by the way, Nate, man, I've got you pinned down. Nate and Eric's coming back.
Yes. We're shooting things tomorrow. We're shooting a couple of videos tomorrow, so it's going to be great.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
Finally.
So just so everybody understands what's going on, YouTube is going through. So everyone, well, I'm not sure if everyone, but like for me, because now I happen to be making them some good money. So they literally sit me down like every week, and we're going through each and every piece of the self-certification and the, how to make sure your videos don't get yellowed and everything. And then when I throw them a video, I'm like, so why the hell is this one yellow? We can't really talk about that. But
let me go through the training again.
Oh my God, yeah, it's been great. But I feel good because obviously YouTube is doing this because the advertisers are on their behind, and obviously, as long as my videos stay monetized, they make more money. So they, to have someone literally sit down on a one-on-one and go through everything with you is like I just, it really, they have to be really having some returns to do this. So
I find that the responses get to be pretty funny when you're like, you go through the training. Okay, now do you understand? And the training is so specious. It's like, there are 3 people. There's YouTube, there's an audience, and there's advertisers. And so then you go and you ask a question. They're like, okay, now there's 3 people. There's YouTube and an audience, and they just keep circle back to the training over and over.
But no, you took the online one. You didn't take the one-on-one one with the person. Like there's one that they send you now with a person, and you got the one with the person, one-on-one. And they literally go through. The person one is like crazy. I like how they also have my channel logo like up on the presentation. Like, hey, this is for Nate the lawyer. I'm like, they made it specifically for me.
It might depend on the person you get too, Nate. You might have got a cool one. So
that's true.
And he's especially noted. We use the Nate example, but yeah, we have to clear up. I have to clear up the warning. So thank God for that, because the warning is a stain on a channel, which is so irritating. Nate and Eric is my only warning, and it got stuck to a channel. What video did we use? There was a video going around of a bus driver who had an interaction with a passenger on the bus. We covered that to say, hey, it's been 10 years. What happened? Got a warning saying, we essentially said, okay, this video is going to be deemed adult. Okay, fine. Then it was struck, and then there was a warning. Now, coincidentally, that exact same video, I found, I think, 20 copies on YouTube currently out there right now. No problem.
Unmonetized, and some of them are even monetized.
All monetized.
Like,
all
what
perfect.
The hell?
Yeah. So welcome to YouTube. And I know that Ian in his other hat has seen plenty of hypocrisy, chicanery, and double standards coming forth from the great leaders in the sky.
Yes, I have. My only advice at this stage, having done it for 5 years, is to understand that these videos we make are just expressions. They're not our babies, and that we have to be prepared to depart, delete, demonetize them at any point, because of the fact that the rules are just so, they're not enforced uniformly. They change on a day-by-day basis, and certainly they change on the platform.
Yeah, but I wasn't said directly to, but it was noted that obviously the more bucks you make, the different standard is going to be, right? So if you're getting 10 million views a month, we're going to look at your content a little differently. Or if you're ABC News, we're going to look. So, like, for instance, one of the weird things was like any misuse of firearms. So I'm like, I can't talk about any active shooter cases. That's it.
Yeah.
It's all cases with active shooters, because those are all misuse of firearms. Well, you see, now it becomes not what you're talking about, but who's talking about them. And I'm like, okay, so it's not the content, it's the who's talking about it. Who can we trust? Who can advertisers trust? So it's a lot deeper than it goes. But again, they got to make money, so it is what it is.
Yep,
that's true. And I got to make money here, Little Rock, with $20. Thank you. Good to catch you guys live. I still haven't been able to catch Southern Law live. I've really been enjoying Nate's coverage. Sorry, I've been busy.
Thank you so much.
Haven't been able to be present.
Oh, and let me say this to this chat too. Listen, I know every week you guys kill me in the comments, kill me in the chat, say you hate me to death, and all you guys come and watch my videos, and I want to say thank you. And that's the reason why, because we always disagree and fight like dogs and cats in here, but you guys still support me, and I really, really appreciate it. And I think that's what makes us different than the other side, because we can fight and argue like dogs and cats, but you guys will still come out to support. So really thank you guys. And you guys have come out for me tremendously. So thank you.
Awesome. And look at this, a super sticker from Rosemary Hernandez. Thank you very, very much. And
now it's time to talk bad about Trump and get everybody upset.
Oh, well, actually, that's where we're going. How did you know? I've got a little video to share that our friend David has put up of our judge.
Now, I'm going to say something controversial, even though I'm being taped. Juries get it wrong a lot. That's my own opinion. I do only civil trials, personal injury cases, contract disputes. But I've had situations where, like, oh my heaven's sake, how could they have thought that? Well, I have a tool that I can deal with that. It's called judgment notwithstanding the verdict. I can say there is no possible way that a reasonable jury would have reached that conclusion. And I've done that twice. And once I got reversed, and once I got affirmed. That's not bad, considering it's sort of controversial to overturn a jury. We love juries. They decide the facts. Like I said, judges don't want to do that. Juries, that's you. Some of you actually have been on jury.
There you go. That's how much he respects the system, folks.
I don't think you said anything too crazy there, though. Like juries do get it wrong sometimes.
I'm
Tim
sure,
Potter.
but the mocking way he does that, like it's like, okay, so you somehow managed to find 12 or 8, 12, depending. I don't know the size of the juries. I guess it could fluctuate. Mm-hmm. And they're, of course, all wrong because your eminence, you know everything. So I'm with lawyers. I'm going to go with Ian to start this off, but this is kind of leading in because the same judge right now has a very famous ex-president in front of him.
Yeah. Well, I've spent a lot of time with judges, and I've had to deal with the egos that go along with that. Oftentimes, you can't make it to being a state judge or certainly a federal judge without that ego, without that drive. So that, as Nate says, that is within the law, that is within the purview. We have the appeal system to stop any unjustified JNOBs, but it does happen. I think that having worked with a federal judge myself, many judges, maybe most, are loath to use that. They don't want to usurp the function of the jury. They're conscious of the fact that it is controversial and that it is kind of like a judicial, almost decision-making when people are oftentimes entitled to a jury to determine their fate. So like Nate says, it's to be expected. Us lawyers face that all the time. I don't think he's going to do that in this case. There's just too much public scrutiny, but that's within his purview.
A question on that. Okay. Is this limited to civil courts? And then I think we had a case that was a deal. What about if a jury determines somebody is not guilty? Can the judge say, sorry, jury, you're stupid, and then say they are in fact guilty. How does that work? Can we flesh that out? Because I really don't know. I want to know.
No, they cannot do that. Go ahead, Ian.
No, go ahead.
Well, you're the best at this.
Well, you guys have got the criminal experience, but even coming from a largely civil background, even though I know they can't determine the guy as guilty. Now they can throw out a guilty verdict, but I'll let you criminal guys explain that better than I would.
Nate, you're a professor. Get on it.
Oh, simply, it's generally one way. If the jury finds someone guilty, the judge can reverse that. But if they find him not guilty, it's more about the impression of the evidence and the credibility of the witnesses, and the judge really can't go into that and overturn that. So guilt can be overturned, but not guilty can generally not be overturned. That's general. But there's been some very interesting case law on death penalties, because in some states they would have the jury determine if the person is going to go to death penalty, and the judge can reverse that. But then there's been some Supreme Court case that says even in that instance, because it's not about liability, that's not about criminal liability, but about punishment, that even if you send it to the jury and they find the person not to be no death penalty, then the judge can't go above that. It happened a couple of times in Florida until they changed their laws, their law a little bit. So, but when it comes to guilty or not guilty, generally, if somebody's found guilty, the judge can kind of reverse and say there wasn't enough evidence for that. Versus if they've found not guilty, then you're good. You're good to go.
Okay, but then civil court, they can say, "Nah, they're idiots. I'm going to still fine for the plaintiff."
That's correct, and that's where we're in. We're in New York versus Trump, which is a civil case.
But let's not also forget too the posture of the case in this particular instance, because the liability phase is over. This is about how much he has to pay. So a lot of people, especially when you hear a lot of people talking about this case, they're talking about, hey, he's not guilty. This is, they'll like something happened because they're like Michael Cohen perjured himself. Yeah, they're gonna throw the case out. It's like, no. You guys gotta understand. This is not about if he's committed fraud. They've already determined that. This is about how much he has to pay for the fraud. So if even Michael Cohen committed perjury, he's still gonna have to pay something because they've already found him liable.
And Nate, I haven't followed the case closely, but it wasn't some of that decided by that judge on summary judgment in favor of New York. So that is the judge taking a fact issue out of the jury's hands ahead of time, saying that the evidence is so clear there'd be nothing to decide. So the judge will go ahead and decide it in summary judgment, which can be all the claims, part of a claim or whatever. But I thought that the judge had done that in this case. If I had read a blurb about it, right?
No, you're go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would say that's exactly right. It was in September of this year. Got to make sure, though, that the people out there understand the process. It's not like the judge just uniformly just makes a decision on the liability finding. There is an opportunity for Trump and all the other defendants to be able to present their facts. And the judge can only make the decision on summary judgment if the undisputed facts support the allegations of the claims. So it's not like Trump didn't have an opportunity to defend himself.
Okay, so now this is where we can have fun with it. Nate, I know you're dying to tell us how Trump is guilty, so guilty that if this was criminal, he should be buried underneath a jail.
Oh, you're talking about for the civil case in New York?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
You know what? I think the problem is that I think everything's contextualized. The New York criminal case for the New York stuff, I think that's a stretch. I think it's BS. I think if his name wasn't Trump and this guy didn't run on his "we're going to get Trump," he wouldn't be tried in New York under the New York the criminal stuff in New York. I also think this case too is suspect because the AG's out there every day talking about, and I'm just going to say it. How inappropriate is it that the attorney general is out there giving press conferences in the middle of the case? Like, I've never seen this happen before. Go ahead, Ian.
I'm supporting you, Nate. It's absolutely. I was talking to Viva about this the other day. It's absolutely. I think it violates their professional responsibility duties, and then you have special prosecutorial duties or the attorney general type duties that are even more stringent than normal lawyers. So I think it's absolutely in the wrong.
Yeah, it's scary, but and. Part of me, because I like to just look at the evidence and just say, okay, what do they have, and it's good. But it's like I don't want to be naive, if you know what I mean, and just sit there and say this is not political because she literally runs on the platform. Yes. I'm going to get Trump. I'm going to bankrupt him. I'm going to destroy his businesses, and gets the power, and then now guess what she's doing? She's bankrupting. She's destroying his businesses. So that's concerning. Now, even though I think the evidence does seem overwhelming, it's like, is it really justice or is this vengeance, political vengeance? And I think if you have to ask that question, I think then this whole thing becomes nonsense. And So that's what tears me about this case, because even as a facts first kind of guy, I have to definitely realize that when you have a vindictive prosecutor who's running on the whole platform of I'm going to get this guy, it kind of feels like if any prosecutor, if you give me the man, I can give you the crime. So that again, that's just how I feel. Do I think he's liable for this? Yes, but I also think that this just feels so bad and inappropriate. Sorry,
Justice
chat.
sits in court all day.
Yeah,
she sits there in court staring at it like the queen in the back, from what I understand, at the crew, not even sitting up there with them. So it's like, is that normal? I mean, this whole thing I find to be disturbing. Nate, you're letting me down. Very, very frustrating to not get that. So we're going to move on to
being reasonable. Being reasonable is letting you down. I'm sorry.
Well, it's
being
like
accurate
clock.
is letting him down.
He didn't want to come in hot. So Andrea, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Good to see you guys.
Before, this is Ian Corine.
Hi, Ian.
How are you,
Andrea, I'm happy you are here. I'm sure there's something going on with Brian Kohberger.
Indeed. Yes, we had a motion hearing yesterday that I went to Moscow to attend, and it was good fun. It was a hearing where the outcome was kind of a foregone conclusion. Nobody really expected the defense to win this motion, but it was a very fun motion. So the defense had moved to dismiss the grand jury indictment, and it was based on a theory that the Idaho Constitution at the time of its enactment would have adopted the Idaho statutory procedures for the grand jury that existed at that time. And at that time, the specific statutory language required the grand jury to basically consider the evidence as though it was uncontroverted and decide whether it would warrant a conviction at trial. And so that's kind of at least strongly suggestive of a beyond a reasonable doubt standard. And so according to the defense counsel, Idaho prosecutors up until the 1980s did in fact instruct grand juries that they needed to return an indictment only if they found proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, then in the 1980s, the Supreme Court went in and adopted a court rule where it basically lowered the burden of proof to simple probable cause. Now, probable cause is the generally accepted standard in pretty much everywhere that uses grand jury indictments. So that was kind of bringing Idaho, I guess, into alignment with what it was sort of understood that the general practice was supposed to be. But so the defense argument is basically that was incorrect, that the constitutional requirement would have demanded a higher standard. So it's a legitimate argument in the sense that, yes, it's logical. It's based on, good arguments that are grounded in case law, grounded in statutory language. But at the same time, there is no chance that this little circuit judge sitting in Moscow is going to say, you, the Supreme Court, got this wrong when you adopted, the rules, and I'm going to throw out the indictment in this quadruple, homicide case as a result of that. But the judge clearly did appreciate the argument. He was very good-natured about it, about engaging with it. But at the same time, saying, "Well, I'm pretty much constrained by what the Supreme Court has said on this." So he did deny the motion, but it's one that it's very possible they may try to actually send it up to the Supreme Court to get higher review on it, and kind of hope they do. It'd be a fun opinion to read.
Well, what are your opinions on the overall case so far? Because it seems like every time I kind of am half paying attention, things are going awry or something doesn't add up in very odd ways. Because I feel like when he was arrested, et cetera, it's like on a silver platter. I mean, it was like, okay, you've got him, you've got all this evidence. Look, this is even the dude showing up at a victim's thing, just like a typical serial killer. He's a pen pal to Dennis Rader and some other person in a program, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then what else? Oh, the FBI was following him. So they're like following him forever. They have all this physical evidence, but it seems like that's an exaggeration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And I think that there's been a massive conflation in the media between what has been presented in court as evidence, what we know is actual evidence in the case, and what has been kind of sleuthing and gossiping and theorizing on Reddit and stuff like that. There's just a big morass of information out there, and it's not really clear at this point what, if any of it, is good, outside of just what we know from the probable cause affidavit. I do think there was a sense when he was first arrested that, okay, there isn't necessarily a ton here. There's obviously enough to arrest him. I mean, touch DNA on the sheath is going to be enough to arrest him. But the expectation was, well, now we're going to get everything. We're going to get his car. We're going to get his clothes. We're going to get his cell phone and his computer, and we're going to find all of these like creepy text messages he was sending these girls, and the things that he did to try to case them out, and obviously DNA and blood and things like that are going to be all over his car. There's no way his car was going to be a walking crime scene, because there's no way that you could commit these 4 brutal murders in like 15 minutes and leave in your car and not leave a massive amount of evidence behind. And it appears that has not materialized, just from the little drips and drabs that we get from the few little statements that the parties can make in their court pleadings. It seems pretty clear that has not panned out at all. So that's really undermined, I think, the narrative that this is a slam dunk case against Brian Kohberger. There was another thing that was mentioned yesterday very briefly during the defense argument, where the defense attorney was explaining the reason why you would have a higher standard in a grand jury proceeding is because you're requiring the state to bring their A game. And he said it seems pretty clear that didn't happen in this case, because there were 6 grand jurors who were saying they wanted to see more before they were told that the standard was only probable cause. So that is just another, it doesn't tell us anything directly, but it very much implies to us that this is not a strong case, that, jurors were questioning even going forward with the indictment based on what the state had presented over what was apparently a multi-week process. They would have had access to everything that they've obtained since the time that he was arrested, all of that investigation that was performed, and it still was apparently not enough to impress 6 of the grand jurors.
Quick question, Andrea. So from what I remember from the case, this was one person essentially stabbing multiple stabs, right, to these other people. And that would, in cases that I've seen and I've even been involved in, there's a lot of transferring of material between, especially in a stabbing, because the stabbing is close and personal. And, after the first one, the second one and third one, then you get everything. And generally, even you get cuts on your own hands. A lot of people don't realize when you get the first, that's kind of what got OJ. When you get the first one, the handle gets real slippery and then you cut yourself. So with all that, there's nothing in his car that is very suspicious. That is like very damning. So they didn't get anything?
That is the statement from the defense briefing was that they located no victim DNA in his car or in his home, and they found no connections between him and any of the victims. So it's not explicitly telling us we didn't find any of this on his computer, we didn't find this specific stuff in his car, but it's making it clear they came up empty-handed.
Wow.
Andrea, I had a question. Where are we in the proceedings right now? Last I checked, it was set for January of 2024 as far as the trial goes. Is that still in place?
There is no trial date right now. So what happened was when Brian Kohberger waived his speedy trial right, the parties basically said, there's obviously a lot going on here. We're going to go ahead and confer between ourselves and figure out what still needs to be done and do our best to come up with a realistic trial date that we can propose to the court. That has basically not happened yet. So, which is kind of not surprising, because we know they at least 50 terabytes of evidence that the defense has to get through. They can't even really game plan their case until they've seen what's already out there from the state. So yeah, we don't even have a trial date at this point. I'm not expecting it to happen in 2024. People have asked me to guess. My guess has been maybe early 2025. But just, given all that volume of stuff, frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if that's even a little bit ambitious.
From this chat, what do you make of the surviving roommates and the delay in contacting authorities?
Mm-hmm. I don't know what to make of that at this point. I mean, I can conceive of a lot of different alternative explanations for why that would happen. I think from my perspective, the bigger concern than the delay, because I could see, okay, you didn't know something was happening. You went to sleep. You woke up in the morning. You found out. Oh, okay. Now you call the police. But I think the bigger concern is the indication that there were quite a few unrelated people who were already there, already at the scene, by the time the police responded. So not necessarily indicating that anything nefarious was happening. It's certainly possible, and that's an avenue that the defense will have to explore. But just in terms of the possibility of tainting the crime scene. I mean, especially when we're relying on something as tenuous as trace DNA to connect Brian Kohberger to this crime, you need to be pretty sure that you can account for whose hands were on that knife sheath and on that button. Because if any one of these students could have been behind Brian Kohberger in line at the coffee shop that morning, and then gone and handled that knife handle, and a transfer is possible under those types of circumstances. So it's going to be hard for them to maintain their integrity of the crime scene, just given those facts.
See, this is chilling, and I want to get everybody's opinion. And do you think they have the right guy? Starting with Nate.
I mean, I have serious doubts that he is the one that did it based on what we've seen at this point in time.
Wow. Steve, any thoughts?
I think he's the right guy, but all respect to the points Andrew's making, that's why you have a trial, right? Because you need to explore that stuff. I haven't seen those things. So would I vote guilty right now? No. But do I think they got the right guy? Yeah. But that's what the trial's for.
Well, I think this case is especially difficult because it's not a serial, it's a spree. Mm-hmm. And, the biggest argument of all, like, when David Berkowitz got caught or whatever, they're saying, killing stopped. Mm-hmm. It's a good sign. Killings were already stopped here, though, so it's difficult. Nate, what do you think? They are the right guy? Look at that.
He's muted right now.
He's so shocked by what Andrew described. He's trying to reevaluate what he's thinking.
No, I'm sitting here talking. I'm talking to myself. I'm like, yeah, blah, 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 giving like this great legal analysis. I'm like, oh,
I wish I had that.
No, but I feel like he's the right guy, but the other side of me, like that analytical side, says something's just off here. It just doesn't make a lot of it doesn't make sense, and if it just doesn't make sense, that generally means not guilty. So I just don't know, to be fair. But right now, if I had to vote, I would be sending that guy home, unfortunately.
Ian.
Yeah, if I was a betting man, I would say they have the right guy, just from what I've seen. And Andrew obviously is way closer than I could ever be. But I made a video about it. I mean, he was following the victims on Instagram, trying to communicate with them. I think there's evidence, and Andrea can correct me if I'm wrong, that he had actually been to the scene prior to the murders. So I know it's tenuous. I know it's weird. I know we don't have evidence that he's done anything violent in the past before that. But there are some connections which seem like that point towards his guilt. And you also have to remember, you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's very possible that he most probably is guilty, but he does not get convicted.
So I will put out there, I do believe that the Instagram connections has been debunked. My understanding is that was something that one of the Steve Gonsalves, I believe, was the original source of that, and then subsequently backpedaled on it. It's not in, the PC affidavit. It's not part of the formal case. You would think that, like, if they found that on a victim's phone, that they would add that to the circumstances that would support PC. So I don't know if we're going to see anything about that. And again, that's just part of what's so interesting about this case is seeing kind of the perception of what there is versus, what is happening in court and what's really being presented. I've been wanting for a long time. I just haven't had the time yet. I've been very behind on making my own videos, but I've been wanting to do a video comparing the probable cause affidavit against Brian Kohberger with the one against the Long Island serial killer, because I think it really just draws such a sharp contrast between just the strength of cases. Within the Long Island case, they just have, corroboration piled on corroboration, corroboration, the messages, the being in the location, the, being seen here and there, and it all is almost overwhelming. And with Brian Kohberger, yeah, there's some, but it's still a little bit of a stretch. I've talked about the cell site location information data and how limited that is in this particular kind of environment. It's an extremely not dense cell phone tower environment. And so that really limits the precision that they're able to get from that type of information. But, that does tend to corroborate a little bit. Obviously, the touch DNA on the sheath tends to corroborate a little bit. The sightings of the white car, the prosecutor is clearly relying on that and on kind of being able to trace this white car through some different sources of video surveillance. We can anticipate that the defense is going to be challenging that, because at least some of the video and the photos that we've seen, they look a little fuzzy. Like, I don't know how you identify specifically what make and model and year and stuff this car is. There was the whole issue of originally the car was identified as one model year and then subsequently changed to another model year. We don't know why that change happened. So just a lot of interesting questions about what exactly the evidence is here, and what it's going to turn out to be when it gets to court.
So something else on this case that's good. I think Andrew will probably agree on this, even though maybe on different sides than we perceive the cases. I think this judge is really good. And one other thing to mention is, okay, he turned down this motion by the defense, which was not really to set Kohberger free. I think they were saying you could change it into presentment or whatever. And then the judge said, look, take it to the Supreme Court because it's their rule. So that's the fair thing for him to do. But he did rule for them pretty much on the genealogical DNA. And I think, while I think that can be a red herring in terms of its direct application to the case, the reasons the defense gave to get it, I thought were reasons for him to grant that order for defense, and he did. And then he kind of split the baby a little bit on the cameras, I think. So I just find him to be a judge who's being very thoughtful and trying to make the right decisions for both sides. I like to see that.
Yeah, I think this judge is an absolute gem. It's why I'm a very minority voice when I say I don't see the defense moving to change the venue in this particular case. I don't think that saves them from the problem of the media taint anyway. Just it's everywhere. It's going to be in Boise, even if you take the trial there, and you risk losing this judge. There is just no way that you risk losing a judge like this in a trial of this magnitude in, I'm going to be frank, a state like Idaho. You just don't do that. So yeah, he's been fantastic. Really enjoyed watching him. He made some comments yesterday that he's going to exercise some more control over the cameras in the courtroom. And I certainly hope that we see that. It's just been a situation where he seems to be making his expectations pretty clear. And the media seems to be, also making clear their intention to not follow it. So he needs to show that his word is to be respected. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Is it possible, and this is just pure my projection and speculation, that the prosecution, due to media and public pressure, maybe moved slightly too quickly? Like, could they have stepped back and monitored him further to maybe get more evidence over time through his own actions?
I definitely think that's possible. Now, I'm not going to impute any kind of bad faith on the part of the state. I think they do want to solve this crime. I think they do think they have the right guy. And I think that likely at that point in time, given they didn't have any other investigative leads, the touch DNA on the sheath was the best lead that they really had to follow up on. And so I can appreciate that if they believed he was the right guy, yeah, they would have been concerned about public safety. And their concern is, if he's out running around for an indefinite period of time, he might kill more people. And then, that's a pretty bad situation to be in. So I do think there was a lot of pressure in that respect to move quickly. I also think there was the expectation that, the car was going to be a walking crime scene. It was going to be a gold mine. His devices were going to be a gold mine. I expected his devices to be a gold mine. And it just, sometimes it does not just doesn't.
And
work
even
out that
more
way.
on the car that makes it significant, if I recall, is not only did they not find anything, it hadn't been washed or anything, right? So
No, I don't know about that one.
It
I don't
was-
think it.
The statement in the defense was that there was no victim DNA and no explanation for its absence. So again, it's not where they came out explicitly and said they didn't find evidence of cleaning, but if they had found, bleach, smear marks, things like that, those would have been an explanation for the absence of victim DNA. So it's one of these things that you can kind of infer possibly from what they have actually said publicly.
Well, and I could be confusing it with the Zachariah Anderson case, which I know it explicitly said the vehicle is dirty.
Mm.
Yeah, well, it was, yeah.
And everything
Yeah.
else. And there was, I think, only one spot or no spots or something of that sort. I'm going to use this to pivot, but I have one more question on this. Is this case another collision potentially of the true crime community, like Reddits and things like that, and YouTubers and speculators who are putting out evidence like Ian had mentioned, or statements about Instagram or this or that? Mm-hmm. Is that a problematic situation for this type of case?
Oh, I absolutely think it can be. I mean, the classic "we did it Reddit" moment, right, was the Boston bomber, and then as it turns out in retrospect, that might have alerted him to the point where the security guard that was shot later on, not saying it was, but could have potentially been implicated by the kind of stuff that was going on Reddit. I can't blame people for being interested in something like this and for wanting to understand it. But at the same time, it's just very difficult for a community to be under this type of scrutiny. It's a bizarro world for a lot of these people to be, looking at their friends and people that they're close to are now, being accused of being involved because some Reddit sleuth, found some connection with a neighbor who was dealing drugs or something like that. There is just, I think, a little bit of a tendency to spiral a little bit out of control. It's always okay to, from my perspective, consider possible alternative explanations. That's just being a good scientist. That's being skeptical. That's what defense attorneys do. It's literally what I tell juries if I'm going to go make a case for them is, you have to consider if there's reasonable doubt, and if there's a plausible alternative explanation, that should be reasonable doubt in your mind. So I don't mind people doing that, but I do think it crosses over the line to becoming, problematic and potentially damaging when it's not characterized that way, when it becomes, a fact of just people asserting things as certain, people asserting things as accusations against people who have suffered as a result of all of this. I think that needs to be handled with a lot more tact.
Cool. Now I'm pivoting on this because I saw this story earlier. Somebody's writing about this, and this may directly affect me too in a weird way, but anonymous sources. Now, Ryan Fournier, apparently he put out a piece stating that Mark Meadows, while working in the Trump administration, was actually wearing a wire for the FBI.
That tweet has since been deleted for anybody who was looking for it.
Oh, yes, it has not only been deleted, he has followed it up by saying, that it was incorrect. Let me see. Here we go. Yesterday, I put a tweet out that Mark Meadows wore a wire, et cetera, et cetera. And now he's saying my sources flipped on it. And where it gets really interesting is he then released, after he got burned, essentially by a bad source, that it was tied in with Representative Walker. But then now there's a further release on this to where he's saying, I didn't say it was actually Representative Walker himself. I said it came from Walker. So the source was quoting Walker. This whole article, everything that's going on about it is the controversy over using anonymous sources, whether this is a valuable thing or a good thing. And in the interest of transparency, I'm kind of in a little bit of a jam on an anonymous source myself, or I'm not naming a source with the prosecutor in New Mexico for the Alec Baldwin case or the Rust shooting, what have you. But I'm curious what your thoughts are, because I can see both sides of this, where you have a lot of activist journalists, Taylor Lorenz, and others who like to do some disingenuous stuff like sources say, and the source, quite often is the damn journalist themselves, journalists, scare quotes. So what are your thoughts, Steve? I'm going to go with you.
So is the idea whether they should be outed, the anonymous sources?
Right. Should anonymous sources be used? Should they be given as much weight? Are we relying too much on anonymous sources to push narratives without actually any kind of substance, which is dirty?
Well, I mean, I think in theory, I think you have to have sources like that. That's been that way forever. And the journalist is supposed to assess that, right? The credibility of that person. They should still do their due diligence. They know who it is and what their track record is of telling the truth. And it's pretty easy these days to spot people who are just out there pushing narratives, and they can claim anonymous sources and things like that, and they don't care about lying. They never, who really trusts media anyway, whether they got a name source or an anonymous source. So I wouldn't blame the concept of anonymous sources for the problems that we have with media today. I think, you may have a whistleblower who needs to bring something up, and that's happened on important things and a lot of times in history, and I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, I guess, on that.
David, welcome.
How's it going? So what did I miss?
All of it.
I just literally pivoted to this story. But okay, so what are your thoughts then? If an anonymous source burns a journalist, should the journalist reveal that anonymous source?
Well, I mean, it burns. That article said, it presumes a lie. The source might have just been wrong. Who the hell knows? Citing anonymous sources without doing your own due diligence, not on the source, but also on the information upon which that source is relying. That's all. The onus is on the person reporting it. And you know damn well, if you report based on someone who doesn't want to go public, it's not their head. I don't want to use any potentially bad analogies. It will not be on them that the consequences fall. And so, no, the onus is on the journalist to make sure. You can't. People will not come to you if there's a risk of being outed afterwards. But if you're going to make wild accusations, you'd better have some damn wild evidence to support them. I saw that. I wasn't going to share my skepticism, but I sure as hell wasn't going to share the tweet. But yeah, that was wild, and if true, earth-shattering. And that requires earth-shattering evidence, even if it's going to be made anonymously. But no, outing journalists or outing sources if they get it wrong, no, because it's going to happen, and then nobody's going to come forward with anything on a going-forward basis. But citing anonymous sources, that's risky, period. So that's on the journalist.
Okay, Ian, on that note, could it be argued the other way, though, that if somebody is a disingenuous source, like they lied to you, and they're peddling a story, that taking the extra step and outing this person can protect other journalists, et cetera, from spreading a bad message? Do you have any opinion on that?
Well, my opinions are strictly legal for the most part. So we're talking about an area about moralistic, journalistic standards. I tend to agree with Viva and Steve. It is on the journalist. And what's so great about our current society today is that in the old days, journalists could get away with a couple lies here, a couple lies there. But, it moves so fast on X these days that if you start doing this stuff, these tweets get demoted, people start disbelieving you. So I really do think, as Viva says, at the end of the day, it is on the journalist. I would really resist some sort of legislation, some law that there's certain things that can be relied upon when you're reporting as a reporter. We have freedom of speech, and I love that. We're free to be able to take this information, be skeptical of it, and then maybe seek out more information to verify it. And then when we find out this guy's lying, this journalist is lying, then not to believe him again.
Mm-hmm. All right, fair enough. Now, I haven't talked about it a lot, but it kind of came up. It appears that they're going to ham sandwich Alec Baldwin. and I'm curious about people's thoughts on this. And I bring it up because I find the whole New Mexico thing sort of nutty. Like, one, they managed to bring charges without a grand jury previously. Then they decided to drop the charges against Alec Baldwin so they could run a set of tests that the FBI had already done. So get this straight. The FBI, they sent this stuff there. The FBI said, no, you cannot fire that gun without pulling the trigger. They tested. They tested it so hard that they even forced the gun. They hit it with a hammer, etc., to prove, no, you got to pull the trigger. It broke the gun. The prosecutors, under the guidance of the Alec Baldwin camp, said that the FBI actually destroyed the gun and that the test wasn't run properly. So the prosecutors took the gun, repaired the gun with new parts, and had it tested again. And I'm sure everybody would be very shocked, but the conclusion of the new test with the repaired gun was you have to pull the trigger for the hammer to fall. And now they're going forth, apparently, and they're going to go to a grand jury and recharge Alec Baldwin. I'm not a fan of the guy, but it does feel a little capricious in nature. This is like twice I've said capricious in the show, but it does feel odd about that. And does anybody have any thoughts on that? I mean, is anybody else troubled by the fact that, okay, FBI did it, and then you say the FBI is not good enough, so you hire somebody else just to repeat the FBI already said, and then you drop the charges and you bring the charges. Is this some sort of strategy? I'm loading a bunch of questions here. I swear I'm not gish galloping, but I'm kind of giving it so everybody can grab. Was this a strategy to leave Hannah Gutierrez Reed hanging out there on her own and maybe pressured her into flipping or making some kind of a deal? And I asked this because in one of the articles it said amongst a plea bargaining negotiation. So anybody who wants to jump on any part of it, I'm sure, David, you got an opinion.
Well, who's got the most criminal law experience here?
Andrea?
Is that me? Yeah, we don't do grand juries in Washington, so I don't have I don't have a very good feel for kind of the dynamics of that and why you choose to do that. But my gut reaction, just from watching how all of that has played out in the Brian Kohberger case, is that it may be just an attempt to kind of restore legitimacy to this prosecution, because, you know, at least ostensibly, you have the stamp of approval of the public that you are purporting to represent by filing these charges. Now, of course, we know it's a one-sided process. You don't have to challenge. There's, you know, no challenge to the evidence at all. You don't have to present on, you know, the defense-friendly case. So it's often, you know, not that uncommon for what comes out at trial to be substantially different than what was presented to the grand jury. But I think just given how much media attention it's gotten, the public opinions about it, the fact that, you know, we've had to go back and forth with prosecutors too, right? We're on the third special prosecutor now, or you know, I don't even remember how many at this point. There have just been a lot of problems and a lot of questions with how it's been handled. So that would be my gut reaction, is that they do still want to proceed with the prosecution, but they want to have that sense of legitimacy supporting them.
So on the gun, Eric, and you know more about probably what's actually going on with these tests than I do, but we both know how this gun works. And you said put new parts in it. So if the FBI was hitting the hammer and broke it, that's also on that gun where the sear is located. And if the hammer is going to drop without the trigger being pulled back, it's because of some malfunction in the sear engagement. So I could have seen maybe welding it back together. But anything you do that changes that sear angle engagement, especially if you just put a whole new piece in, you're not testing the gun anymore that he had. That's like the old thing about George Washington's axe. The handle's been replaced 5 times and the head 3, but it's still the same axe. No, it's not. It's different. So I don't know that that's what happened. But when you mentioned that, it caught me. It's like forensically, I don't think you can change the material piece of the gun that allegedly malfunctioned and then say, well, it works right now. I didn't necessarily see the pulling of the trigger as as the trigger for whether he was criminally negligent, because you had to cock it, you had to point it, and you didn't check it, whether he should be charged or not. The pulling of the trigger and holding it back was, to me, you should assume that gun should malfunction if you're going to be pulling the hammer back and pointing it at somebody and have done the other things that you should do to make sure that's safe. You can't rely on the seer engagement to not be negligent, in my opinion. But, you know, he's got his defenders that say it wasn't his responsibility, and other people that say it was. But that's weird to hear that they did a retest on this by replacing parts, and that matters to the prosecution. That's strange to me.
Oh, exactly. And they had the FBI report. I don't know, the whole thing seemed very weird when they dropped the charges to begin with and said it was because of the questions about the testing. It's like, you have the documentation, you have all the testing. I have a ton of criticisms about the FBI, but it's usually not their forensic lab. I don't know about you guys. Ian.
I have plenty of complaints about the FBI's forensics.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
The FBI's original conclusion was that he had to have pulled the trigger, period.
Right. The gun will not fire without the trigger being pulled.
He needed to be charged. The fact that he had one of the charges dropped because it was, what was the firearm aspect of the charge?
Oh, that was the enhancement. That was proper because they charged him with an enhancement
that didn't exist at the time.
It didn't exist at the time of the crime.
That's
even if they switched to the previous version of the enhancement, the previous version said that the person had to be in distress he was pointing the gun at. And due to the circumstances, she wasn't under distress at the time. So the enhancement charge, the original law, also did not fit.
I don't look. I forget what the circumstances were of them, ending the first charge. But pull the trigger or not, the gun was in his hand when it went off and it killed somebody. So if his defense is an act of God that it's spontaneously shot. It spontaneously shot a bullet that was he'll raise that as a defense, but he had to get charged. He has to get charged. I don't know what the rationale was for, what's the word? Not dropping the charge the first time. What did they do?
Dismissed.
Dismissed, so they can refile within a certain period of time.
Right.
He needs to get charged for this. It's like it's a no-brainer. What his defense is going to be, that's a separate matter. Whether or not they prove beyond a reasonable doubt, whatever it's going to be, negligence or manslaughter. I forget what is the charge that they're bringing or about to bring?
Manslaughter, I believe.
Yeah, and it's based, I think, on criminal negligence is the operative. I think.
So he'll say, I never pulled the trigger. The sun was so hot, it spontaneously got the bullet to fire. Let him make he had to be charged. He has to be charged. He said a number of things which are just contradictory and sunk himself even more. So if they don't charge him, it'll be more outrageous than doing what they're doing now.
Ian, have you followed it at all, or?
Well, the part that I followed on concentrate is kind of the overall, having been in the U.S. Attorney's Office and seeing the politics that are involved, to me, it just seems like people are trying to get their name out there. And I know there's a lot of public sentiment, both sides, but to me, it doesn't even feel like they're spending a tremendous amount of time making their case airtight. I think they think it's going to end up in some sort of plea deal. I think they want to, because there's been multiple prosecutors, I think they're trying to make a name for themselves. So while we can go back and forth on what they're doing, it just seems so, I don't know if it's underhanded, but it seems so suspect that I must believe that it's political in nature.
Oh, there's definitely politics involved. I mean, who did he say that he didn't pull the trigger with? George Stephanopoulos. I mean, definitely running into the Clinton family. Ironically, her widower also worked with the Clintons. And anyway, there's so many crazy ties with that case. It's mind-boggling.
And they want you to be Susan McDougal now.
God, yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. Last I spoke with anybody was to say, hi, my name is EricHunley, and I'm with Nathaniel Brody. And that's it. That's the last that I spoke to the prosecutor directly. And then Nate had a very pleasant conversation with her. And I would report back that by the end of the conversation, she was not very pleased, in my opinion, with either myself or Nate. So I don't know if I'll hear anything else. Not sure what's happening, but it's interesting.
Wild.
You're muted, David.
I don't know who did that. That's terrible. Have you talked about Jamal Bowman yet?
Fire alarm guy. Yeah, apparently he's being charged.
Oh, have you seen the video of the incident?
What? When he was trying to open the door?
Yeah. The video was released. I'll send it to you in the private chat here. Greg Price put it up yesterday. Oh, dude, he's such a liar. It's unbelievable that people are not afraid of God, even if you don't believe in God. That you think you're gonna get away with lying, okay, open that up. You got to see it.
Okay, can I make an observation though? What kind of person is going to actually pull the fire alarm? Somebody with a mentality of junior high school, right? So what kind of defense would somebody with a maturity of a junior high schooler try to put up for themselves? So
I gotta say though, he thought, of course, that opened the door, so that the fire alarm actually opened the door.
No. So go look at that. There's two things in here. In the replies to that, someone provided an enhancement of what the sign says, and it says emergency hold for 3 seconds for door to open. He takes the signs down, pulls the alarm, and goes. And this is after he said, I thought it would help me get out because I was in a rush to vote, as if the vote was outside. But the even better than that, Eric, if you can bring up the second tweet that I showed you. This man's going to get arrested now. I ordinarily would never have clamored for, demanded a mugshot, but go watch his response to Trump's...
Oh,
it's like karma. It's like when you don't lead a life of principle, your past conduct will bite you in the ass.
Yes.
I thought this was a joke. I thought this was a fabricated video when I first found it. From his legit Twitter handle. We got you. He did this.
He's got you.
Oops, sorry.
We got you. And more to come. Clown. Thug. Crook. Criminal.
Clown and a criminal. He's calling Trump a clown. This guy pulled a fire alarm to delay a vote. Oh.
Viva, I got a question. I thought he was fined $1,000 and that was his penalty.
Well, they charged him. I have to see what he pleaded to, because he said I didn't think that they had resolved it that quickly. I thought they had charged him to a nothing charge.
Yeah, it was a nothing charge, and I thought he'd already discharged the penalty. But maybe there's more prosecution to come. I don't know.
He pleads
guilty. It's a misdemeanor. Yeah.
Pleads guilty after. Well, here, I'll send this to Eric as well. You can bring this up, and I'll just read this in real time. Yeah, I just got lost in the hypocrisy. I'm thankful. Okay, so hold on. It says Rep. Journal. He pleaded guilty Thursday. Before misdemeanor. Okay, yada yada yada. I'm thankful for the quick resolution from the District of Columbia attorney. Grateful, I did not obstruct nor intend to obstruct the proceedings. Bullshit. I'm responsible for activating the alarm. I'll be paying the fine and looking forward to these charges being ultimately dropped. So I guess it's he'll get a
deferred prosecution type of deal.
He'll get a diversion or.
I have one question now. What do you think would have happened if, let's say, Matt Gaetz had pulled that fire alarm?
I can't make the joke because I don't want people taking it seriously. Serious repercussions. Flogging, public flogging.
How is this not insurrection? Interrupting government. I'm just curious.
Well, hold on. Didn't we just have people who invaded the Capitol about a week ago, too? They're all going to be locked up for 2 years, right, before they go to trial?
It's not double standards. It's not hierarchy. It's lawlessness. It's using goons for criminality, knowing that they will get, if they're on the right side of the political aisle, they will not only not get punished, they'll get rewarded in the long term. Ian just had to change the battery pack.
Oh, shoot. See, that's why we have a professional.
I'm coming back in 30 seconds. I'm just going to go to the fridge and get an energy drink.
An energy? You don't need energy.
He's changing his battery pack, too.
Apparently. That's too funny. All right. What was it? I wanted to see any other cases we were talking about. Any thoughts about Larry Elder since suspended his campaign? I think sadly. I don't know if anybody followed. They managed to push him out of the vice presidential debates pretty thoroughly. Ian, Ian, you live in California, right? I don't know if you
kind of both. Yeah, kind of both sides. Yeah. I don't have many thoughts of it. I mean, obviously we expected it. I think it's a great platform. You pay multi-thousands of dollars, and then you can speak to hundreds of thousands of people and get more followers on X. Larry Elder, I believe, ran for governor of California too. So, it's a non-issue for me. I actually today, it was so funny you brought it up, because I was looking at all the people that have withdrawn from presidential contention, it's the list is mounting.
Well, the list of how many people are running, because somebody pitched me an interview saying presidential candidate, and I was like, oh, okay, and I looked. I think there's like 100 and some odd candidates who are running for president.
And at the very bottom is Mike Pence.
Well, there you go. Southern Law's favorite. You're not only a fan, you're president of his fan club, right?
Is he actually behind Vivek?
Oh, Pence is at 1% or 2%.
Yeah, Vivek was catching up with DeSantis. He's fallen back.
Vivek was at 7% the last time I checked. Do we? That's totally separate note. Do we all agree that energy drinks have to be carbonated? Like, if you have 200 milligrams of caffeine in something that's not carbonated, you just drink it too quickly. I tell you something. I'm going to write.
We should have a debate about that. Yeah.
I think
shots.
Actually, now that you mention it, there's no caffeinated. Is there? Well, other than like coffee liquor, there's no caffeinated alcohol other than those like mixed drinks. The blue ones.
Yeah.
Does everyone remember
espresso martini. Yeah.
Espresso. Oh God.
That sounds disgusting.
What was I going to say? No, I just had on the CEO of Public Square, and they're talking about an event that's going up in Orlando, where all of the presidential candidates are going to not get involved in a gong show of a debate like in LA, but they're going to express their positions on small business and probably give a more sensible presentation about why they should be president. I think Trump is going to be there.
Oh, wow.
Square. You had, I think this is the one. Aren't they the people who have that app where you can go find other products that are supposedly not woke, blah, blah, blah. I was looking into them a little bit ago thinking, oh, hey, that's a really cool thing. I love competition with Amazon, etc. But then I saw a criticism that they wanted you to take a quiz or something saying, so you're pro-life and you're this and you're this and you're this. And if that is in fact true, if there is some sort of a quiz or standard, then I have trouble supporting that platform, because my whole thing is I don't like cancel culture, period. And I don't like to be, I don't need to check the boxes to be on your side or those side. That's a problem.
Well, no, Seifert explained the process, and I don't think like it's not a litmus test. It is, I don't know if it's a pledging or what. It's an undertaking not to impose politics on your patrons. Like that's the whole idea is it's not a proactive, like do a DEI thing. It's a proactive, don't do anything. There was one thing that he explained, which just taking the abortion question, they want to make sure that the companies are not donating to any causes that would be contrary to certain principles, because then the patrons are necessarily indirectly subsidizing certain politics that they don't want to be affiliated with. So,
to me, that kind of goes against the whole. We're open for everybody to be free. I like the whole free speech platform, free associate. As soon as you do that test, it bothers me, dude.
But it's like a B Corp, except on a political neutrality scale. Like, you want to make sure you're not getting, on the one hand, grifters, or on the other hand, companies that that'll be through the back door donating to Planned Parenthood, and then people realize, oh, I've been buying coffee from them, and I don't want to support that. That much I understand. I don't think there's any. You don't want politics in business. I mean, that's basically the idea of it.
But that's politics. So I'm saying it's kind of going right against its own principle. It's like, how about you just sell your stupid thing? Like I'll give Jeremy from the Quartering the thing. He's like, hey, I want to sell coffee. Please buy my coffee. I don't care who you are.
Well, I think in the capitalist society, the coffee maker is competing with other coffee makers, and so it's a viable point of distinction that, you know, hey, that coffee maker over there is out there supporting Planned Parenthood. Your money, your purchase there is, you know, potentially supporting a cause that you don't agree with. Mine isn't. So in some ways, it seems to me like the market should be able to correct for a lot of those things anyway.
Yeah, but Eric, I mean, the whole point is you're basically saying to Public Square, allow companies that have DEI requirements to come and sell on your platform.
No, I'm talking about people.
Well,
you know, people who want to buy. I mean, if I'm a consumer, I just want to consume.
I don't think
I don't think that, you know, I should have to take anything. I just want to consume things.
No, not for the consumers. No. I don't think any sort of questionnaire was required of consumers. It was only for the businesses that want to use the service. I signed up. They didn't ask me. They didn't ask me a question.
Okay, yeah, I'd have to.
No, I think it's good. It's the idea that you want to make sure the companies there are ideologically aligned, not in a proactive compulsion sense, but in a, you know, leave me the heck alone. Eric wants to throw out a 95% solution over his 5%. I don't think the objection exists in real life, but I have no vested interest in taking that position.
All right, fair enough. Let me see. What else do we have? You had to Public Square. Oh, yeah. Let's see. We'll go with something nice and salacious. Now I got to.
This is delicious. I'm just going to drink it too damn fast, and 200 milligrams of caffeine too quickly can't be good.
Yeah, you're known for your needing of caffeine because you're so low energy.
I tell you, it's like ADD or Adderall. It has the opposite impact, but then again, I haven't been sleeping well, so maybe
I can predict right now where Eric's going. Ricky Lynn Laughlin?
Yes. How did you know?
You looked at the
shiny window. This is one of those that I find to be curious, and, you know, thank you for being on that panel too, Andrea, too, because I feel like this happens over and over and over and over and over, and it's very weird. No offense, most people would say this is an attractive person.
Hold on, go up to the first one.
Oh yeah, she's on mugshot shotties for sure.
Who's the guy behind her? Is that her boyfriend or is that
her husband?
That's her husband. Okay.
Yeah, and she was sending, I guess, a sex tape, messages, etc., to a 16-year-old student. So this happens frequently enough that I kind of wonder about it. Like, one, if I can be truthful, 16-year-old Eric would be saying, well, why couldn't I get picked? And there's a lot of males, immature that we might be, who have kind of the stance of, well, that didn't happen when I was 16. You know, there's a whole Hot for Teacher thing. It's a Van Halen video. I'm not kidding. Ian, am I wrong?
No, I'm just thinking about Van Halen right now. Yeah.
Okay, so now, but I'm curious, is this a syndrome because of a control situation? Like, she likes having someone younger because she can be in control of the situation or relationship? I'm just curious, what is the mentality for this type of thing to happen?
What state was this in?
Missouri. And actually, the age of consent for Missouri is 17 years old. He was 16.
Oof.
And we don't even know how many months. It's very close.
And Ian, if anybody knows, are there any of these laws in these states where there's a window of not a grace?
The age difference.
Because I remember there's some states where it's 2 years if it's a 16 and an 18-year-old, which makes sense. 16 to 24, they're both young, but she's, I guess, by Missouri law, not young enough. If it were in England, not to mention anybody else's name in particular, but 16 years old would have been the age of consent, and 24, there would have been absolutely no problem.
Well, no, that's not true, though, isn't it? Because even if he was of the age of consent, even if he was 17, she's still a teacher, so there's the power.
And I thought some places had separate statutes for that.
Yeah, some places have separate statutes specifically for that. I don't know if Missouri does or not.
Well, the charges in this one are possession of child pornography, tampering with a victim, tampering with physical evidence, and sexual trafficking of a child. I did not see statutory rape as part of the charges.
So she got some stuff from him, in other words, is what it sounds like.
Well, that's what it sounds like. There was no disclosure in the press about that. It was only disclosure she was on Snap doing naked pictures. She invited him to have sex at the house when the husband was gone. So there must be more to the charges than we can see in the press.
Yeah. Of course, they make hay that she's a fan of Trump.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah.
What is it? I think the only thing I saw is the students said that they were uncomfortable with it, but I don't know. It seems really, really weird that goes on so frequently. And Andrew, I'm putting you on the spot. Anybody on the spot? Why does it happen so often?
Why, Andrew?
Well, I can't relate to this at all. But I was here when Mary Kay Letourneau happened. That was in my state. And that was like the first big high profile, instance of this type of situation. So I'm pretty aware of it. If you're going to put,
what was that name you just said? I just want to Google.
Mary Kay Letourneau.
Yeah, they got married. She went to prison.
Yeah,
they were married when he got out. And,
had his baby in prison. They were married afterwards for years. They only just recently divorced after like a decade being married or something like that. It's quite an unusual relationship. But I mean, if you're putting me on the spot about why do women do things like this, my answer is going to be narcissism. There are some women who just, want to be attractive to everybody, need to be attractive to everybody, need to feel like every man out there wants them. They can get every man that they want. And so I think that there's some appeal of like the younger, coming of age boy that just feeds her desire to be irresistible.
Has everybody seen the movie Election with Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon?
I don't remember it.
Well, there's a scene in it when the teacher Matthew Broderick's friend in the movie has a relationship. He has sex with a student in high school, and then the scene where when they bust him and he starts sobbing and he goes, "But I love her." Like, it's there's something. The woman, she knows it's wrong. She knows it's illegal. Maybe she genuinely loves the kid in a way, but I mean, you just can't do it. The double standard jokes that are obviously going to be coming out is she's smoking hot and this is the luckiest 16-year-old on earth. Who was it that had a stand-up bit? He said like the kid was had this relationship with a hot teacher and then
it's Joe Rogan. Yeah.
Died by getting high-fived to death by his classmates. I mean, it's a weird thing because even if you flip it and you say that the teacher is as smoking hot as Brad Pitt, no one would accept it even for a second. I don't think so. There is a weird social double standard. 16 gonna be 17. The kid could get tried as an adult for a crime. The question here is going to be why can't he get treated as an adult for this decision?
He'll be treated as an adult for purposes of if there's a child and he's required to pay child support. He'll be treated as an adult for that, whether he wanted to participate or not.
Yeah, and also I just want to bring up her defense is that she did not know. She says she did not know that he was 16 until the authorities arrived. So that's allegedly what they're going to defend.
What are the positive obligations they have in the States or Missouri? You have to check ID. I mean, that defense no longer is available to people in Canada.
Well, not knowing his age isn't really an excuse. Again, she was a teacher. I thought you weren't supposed to do it when you were a teacher.
But there's no criminal law against it.
Is there?
Yeah, she's a special education teacher.
It's certainly special.
Thanks.
He looked 17.
I don't know. It does seem like definitely there'd be no question if it was a male teacher and I'll just say a male teacher because it could also be same sex and it'd be the same scenario with that. So I don't know.
My question, Eric, on this one is how often does this happen and we don't hear about it? And is there any other motive? Supposedly the school, it's very ambiguous, but the school district brought this whole thing, this prosecution up. And you wonder if there's something else going on. You never know. I never trust any of these stories because it looks so weird when you look at the Daily Mail and see the pictures and see the response and the missing information. I don't know. I don't think it's the boy that's behind the prosecution.
No, we know what he was behind.
I'm just
leave it to Steve to bring that up.
Steve is killing it today.
He is.
It's called Steve is a sniper. He's a well-trained shooter, and that's what he's doing right now. He is definitely sniping. All right, so
I'm reading some of the chat, Eric. You got some funny. I can't read the jokes in the chat, but there's some.
No, you can't.
No, not out loud. But that's why we have a chat, is to have these wonderful, charming moments and camaraderie. But to wrap things up, Steve, what do you have coming up? Where can people find you?
Big show tomorrow morning at 9:30 for crime updates, and the very reasonable judge in California. You can skip getting up early tomorrow because Andrea laid that case out for you, I think, very well. But we didn't talk about the Richard Allen case, which is the exact opposite of how it's going out in Washington. So we'll hit that in some other cases for people who are up with coffee or Celsius drink.
There you go. Or they just watch the replay. Andrea, what do you have coming up?
So the best place to find me right now is on Twitter. My handle is here and on the screen. I have not had a whole lot of time for YouTube lately, but I am going to be try to be putting out a video hopefully pretty quickly about this hearing that I just went to yesterday over in Moscow, and some other things that I've had in the works for a while, but just haven't quite had the chance to push out. So hopefully going to get some more stuff out on YouTube pretty soon.
All right, David's setting on fire. He just literally interviewed Vivek himself. He kind of buried the lead, which is amazing. And what was it? Vivek and Dinesh D'Souza on the same day?
In the same week. And then I had Dr. Drew. And then it's been getting good. There's going to be some more. There's more in the lineups. I got distracted. In the chat, it says he refused to have sex with her, which might... Interesting. I'm gonna go. I'll find the details on that story. What's coming up with me? Sunday night shows coming up. Viva Barnes, but everybody knows where to find vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And I think I'm done for the day. I'm gonna go outside and maybe try to do some fishing or go to the beach.
Go fishing. Yeah.
All right, Ian. Great.
You can find me at all the social media platforms at Ian Corine. Just look for vertical video. I'm trying to become the master of vertical video. I talk about all sorts of commentary related to trending political issues. And I teach you also some of the secrets behind the scenes when you're a federal prosecutor, when you're a civil lawyer. So again, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, at Ian Corine.
Awesome. And folks, as usual, in the description here on YouTube, you can click any of these names. They'll take you right to the channel. I highly encourage you, after subscribing here, please subscribe, folks. Check these folks out, subscribe, and Ian's doing all short, so it won't take too much of your time.
Eric, hold on, one question. Did you get in touch with Team YouTube for the silver play button?
I did get in touch with them. The order's gone in, found out that the second button costs a good chunk of money. I was like, okay.
I've got to ask.
Look at that.
How much does the second one cost?
I think it was $173, including shipping.
You know what? This is what everybody wants right here. Oh, look at it's on my finger at the Rumble statue.
I love it.
It's beautiful. Oh, it's so heavy. Like well, I was going to make a dead zone, not a dead zone, a Twilight Zone joke, but it's beautiful. And yeah, get it, Eric.
We'll get there. I hope to see it soon. And everybody, if you like this kind of thing, these panels, every Friday at noon Eastern time. Hopefully you'll see some of these people here next time.